Richard Holden, Richard Holden, Richard Holden. What is he doing? He thinks he's got another ace in the hole for him, a repeat of what made him a top name in the Conservatives last time around, but already has not got off to a great start. So during the COVID years and lockdown and all that jazz, Richard Holden got his name as the attack dog of the Conservative Party and a cushy chairman's job because he pushed for Durham police to investigate the so-called Currygate. This was after Boris Johnson had been caught lying about having parties in Downing Street, and so he was trying his best to deflect attention away from the party and put it back onto Labour. As it turned out, the police had already investigated and they said there was no rules broken, which then Holden pressed the police to have a further investigation, so they reopened it after having a lot of pressure put on them, and again found that no rules had been broken. Richard Holden then went on to do a massive chicken run during the election to make himself the only selectable candidate for Basildon. So out of a candidate selection of one, he obviously got selected to serve as Conservative representatives for the area. He saved his seat by the skin of his teeth and has a 20-vote majority, which upset a lot of his colleagues as well, to be fair. There were a lot of Tory MPs that didn't like the way he'd handled his chicken run, just to try and keep hold of his seat. So it's clear his latest gimmick is a way of trying to get back into the good graces of the Tory party. By repeating what he did the first time round, because it was quite successful back then, it was revealed in a book that Keir Starmer had a voice coach during lockdown. Richard Holden is claiming that he's now broken COVID rules, which, to be fair, it's quite hard to have an opinion on. I mean, this is now 5 years ago. They weren't in power, and it's not like Boris Johnson, who was the man at the top making the rules and then just flouting the rules all over the place. So I don't know what people are really going to be thinking. I don't know if people are actually going to be that bothered about something as small as this. But what I did like to see is hard Tory supporter Nick Ferrari showing his visible frustration with Richard Holden. The fact that he's bringing this back up now, reminding everybody exactly what the Tory party were up to during the lockdown. The parties they're having, the constant boozing, the constant flaunting of the rules, and the lie after lie after lie. It's a period of history I should imagine the Tories really want to forget, because it was the start of the downfall for them. And yet here he is, Richard Holden, dragging that all back up again. And you can tell from the small clip that it's not gone well for him.
At that moment in time, you might remember that Sir Keir was being very, very clear that all the rules had to be followed and the law had to be followed absolutely, that he would be incredibly hard on anybody who didn't. He was calling for investigations all over the place. Yet it turns out that he had a voice coach, acting coach.
This would be the same time that your colleagues were having parties in Number 10 and breaking children's swings in the garden, would it? And you're seeking to lecture Labour about that. Are you
well,
sure?
I'm just being very clear, Nick. I think that the rules should be applied equally to everybody else. That's what Keir Starmer wanted. That's what I want. There was an independent investigation. You might remember
honestly
it from
pretending that the Conservative Party emerges with any credit from that period of time. Why on earth would you want to remind voters of the fact that people were drinking Prosecco, partying, in one instance, and vomiting in a toilet and breaking a child's swing? Where's the currency in that?
All I would say is that Sue Gray was appointed to do an investigation into all of that stuff and did it at the time.
You must be nuts. To remind listeners of that time, when the party behaved disgracefully, why on earth would you remind people of that?
Well, I didn't behave
not talking about you, I'm talking about the government at the time. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor, two Conservative Prime Ministers, fined by the police. And you choose to remind the listeners of that.
You're absolutely right, Nick. They were fined over having a sandwich at a work meeting. You're absolutely right. That's what was happening, and I can't believe that you don't think that Sir Keir should be held to the same standards, especially when he pressed it so hard at the time.
The rules were followed. The rules were followed, and it was a professional engagement. What Labour says.
When Nick Ferrari gets a bee in his bonnet, you really can't shut him up about it, which is pretty much like you've seen in this clip. However, when he's actually speaking to an expert in their field, he can actually be lost for words, which you can see in the video that's on screen now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.